from Los Angeles, California. This is Now Daily with Robert Crawford, uncovering real stories worth sharing. Join the talk at nowdaily.com/show.
Welcome to Now Daily. I'm Robert Crawford. We're going to be talking about a few interesting topics tonight. Where I'm here tonight with Charles Contreras. We have a new co-host with him as well.
Los Angeles, California. This is
Charles,
Now
you want to
Daily
say what's up?
with Robert Crawford.
What's up, everybody?
Cool. So let's get started. I think what we wanted to touch on, we wanted to start on the top TED Talks today. I think we found some interesting TED Talks that taught us something new. Did you get a chance to breeze through any of the videos? Anything catch your eye?
I really like the Sir Ken Robinson one, where he talks about how the school system is making our kids less creative and making them be very, one-sided with their thinking. But that was a really, really good video. It was funny, it was educational, and then there's another video that wasn't on our top 10 list article, but it was the one with Jamie Oliver. He did a TED Talk, I think it was 2008, 2009, where he talked about the food in the public school system. I thought that one was really interesting, where he goes over what we're actually feeding our kids in public schools. And then I think he ended up doing like a show about that for a little bit. I don't know if anybody remembers the name of that show, but he did a show about that for a little while.
Yeah.
What about you?
I mean, there's been a few that have definitely caught my eye for sure. I think on the list we've put, schools, how schools are killing creativity. I think that's a pretty big problem. I think schools are they've really been standardized the last few decades, and I think people don't really realize it. But schools, it came out in like the 60s or 70s, and we should find some documents and put them on the website for this. But it came out that the Ford Foundation and I believe the Rockefeller Foundation and a few other major foundations had an entire agenda of changing the education system. And I think a lot of, basically everything starts when you're in first grade, right? You're indoctrinated for 12 years, and they could be teaching you some really brilliant things. I think we come out with a lot of useful skills, right? Math, science, those basic things that we need to know. But I also think they don't teach you the full amount of skills that we really need to survive in today's environment. That's why most people have to go to college afterwards.
I think Sir Robinson made a good point when he said that the school systems are just really good at pumping out more teachers, more university teachers, and that's all they seem to be doing is just, you have to be good in math, you have to be good in science, you have to be good in English, you have to be good at writing, and it's just pumping out more and more, university teachers. It's not pumping out the same creativity that we used to. Kids can't sit still, so they're giving them, they're saying that they have ADHD and ADD, and just because they can't sit still. And it's because most of them are just not interested in whatever they're being taught. They're more interested in dancing. So, they're probably interested in being danced, or maybe they're more interested in just playing instruments instead of learning about history. So, and then he also touches on how, as our generation, we have to we go to college, and then we get BAs, we get bachelors, and then we go home and we, can't find jobs. And it's because that the jobs that used to require bachelors now require masters, and the jobs that used to require masters now require PhDs. And it's just this explosion that pushes us all into school, and to stay in school longer, and to stay in school further. And it all goes back to what we were talking about a little bit, I think, last week or the week before, about how all the millennials are just indebted to the school. You know what I mean? And if it comes from this idea that we all need to be, taught the basics, and, we all need to have very specific education paths. So it forces us all to go to school, longer. It seems like a circle, you know what I mean? It seems like a deep hole that we can't get out of.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely touched on a number of things. Um, the biggest thing I think you hit on were the grade system, because the grade system to me is the most backwards part of the entire school system. Because there's a lot of good things you learn, right? It's really hard to make money in our world if you can't do basic math. So no one's arguing about knowing your, addition, subtractions, percentages. Everyone knows that we have to learn that. But the grade system really has no use in the real world. I've never been on a job or worked with anyone or have done anything outside of school where someone was like, "You get a B. You did a really good job," but I would say B, not A, but B. Like, no. I think the real world report card is your financial statement. That's what Rich Dad Poor Dad really kind of broke through and taught a lot of people, is we're thinking about finances wrong because they never taught us about finances. They taught us about these old skills, and you're right, and the system can't keep up with it. So I think the debate's like whether it's all purposely been done to get the system how it is right now, or if it's just happened kind of organically over time. I think the biggest thing is the unions, and now you have the federalization standards. So you have the Fed giving a ton of money to these school systems, basically saying you're going to teach what we want to teach, or we're not going to write you these checks. But we're also seeing a lot of schools coming out saying, you know what, we'd rather not take the money. We're just going to teach our own way.
But yeah, and then you get into charter schools and privatized schools and all those different types now that are becoming increasingly harder and harder for people to get their kids into. There's a really good documentary on Netflix called Waiting for Superman that touches on that kind of stuff, and that will really put a damper. If you have kids and you watch that documentary, you'll probably end up homeschooling your children. Like, that's how sad our public school system is.
Yeah, I mean, if and when I have kids, I think I would. Well, I mean, it's a debate, right? Because you don't want them to. I think there's negatives of homeschooling. I think there's negatives of private school, and there's negatives of public school. But I think that there is, something that scared me is this new Amazon documentary. Have you seen this?
Which one?
It's called Amazon. It just came out. The Man in the High Castle.
I was just looking at that actually. Like, before we went on, I was like, I think I'm going to check out this show.
Yeah, so I watched the preview, and then yesterday I watched, I think, almost all the episodes. There's only like 10 episodes. But it really scares the crap out of me, because that's like what living in a socialist or fascist regime is all about. Like, it's literally a nightmare. You can't be free in any word or mean. But what they teach the kids in the school that you see in this show is they basically teach them to worship the state. The state gives them everything. The state is God. Wow. So I think we're starting to see that. We were talking about it last week with that college student that felt that she was entitled to the $15 minimum wage and the free school and everything like that. I think that's from some indoctrination of people actually trying to get people to believe that that's what, how the world works, when it's really not.
Yeah, I haven't seen that show, but I did see it on Amazon, and I probably will check it out now. But they're starting to come out with some better and better stuff over there on Amazon Originals, that is.
Yeah, so going back to these TED Talks, I think everyone can check them out on Now Daily. You can watch the videos on there. We posted links to it. But one I found was really interesting, and I think has gotten a lot of play, especially in like the entrepreneur community, has been this one by Simon Sinek on what makes great leaders and companies great. And he gives an example of Apple, basically, and how Apple has been so successful because of its why, the reason of why they're successful. He kind of compares them to like HP or Dell. They were creating computers, they were creating laptops, they were basically creating the same product, right? But why is Apple so much more successful than all the other competitors? It's because they were creating the products, but the products weren't the end result of why they were doing what they were doing.
Yeah. I mean, Apple has always been a company after, aesthetics and after, making sure the products, I will say that Apple, the products haven't always been like breaking edge cutting, aside from like, but even when the first iPhone came out, like touchscreen, that wasn't new. Nothing that they were doing was like groundbreaking per se, but it was all together in one package. It was aesthetically pleasing. It felt good in your hand when you touched it. That was one thing that Apple, I think, has always been leading the way on is aesthetics. And when they do come out with a product, just making sure that it works and it's doing its thing. And then one thing that we talked about a long time ago, personally, was Apple's way to create content and context. Content where they're having these things where it's like, oh, that's really cool, that's interesting, and context where it pulls you through the message. And that's one thing that Apple kills it at. That they're always creating these commercials that like tug at your heartstrings. They create these commercials where you're like, oh my god, I don't even know what that is, but I want it. I gotta have it. Like you feel connected with the commercial. Like I'm not a big Apple fan. I don't have very many Apple products, but every time I see an Apple commercial, and like I feel connected. I'm like, that's cool. That's interesting. That's really neat. That's a sexy MacBook, like
I mean, I think yeah, I think the advertisements are one aspect of it for sure, but I think it all comes back to their why because they're at least when Steve Jobs was in charge, and I don't know if Tim Cook has the same why, but he wanted to like literally put a dent in the universe, like change the way that we lived our lives.
yeah,
While the
for
other
sure.
companies just wanted to make a product and sell that product.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think I think that's the difference. So I guess the difference is really just passion.
True. True. Passion and trying to make that difference and then sticking to it.
So another one of these TED Talks that I thought was really interesting was this one by Hans Rosling, where he basically does a data graph. He basically takes data from the world's population, like the population levels, how big the population is, compared to the countries and the time. And he maps everything out over time and basically proving that we have the best standard of living on a global level than we've ever had before.
Yeah, his video was really cool, and the way he put the PowerPoint up on the wall and on the projector, and then was like dancing in front of it, basically. Um, and he was doing that for like 15 minutes, I think. Yeah, he was a really it was a really good animated TED talk to watch. Just to watch that guy and how passionate he was about his data and his statistics. And I've always been a firm believer that statistics really, say a lot. Statistics aren't wrong. Numbers don't lie. Only people do. So you follow the numbers and you take the data and you extrapolate it and you come to your own conclusion. Whether you think A plus B does equal C or you think that A and B have no relations to each other whatsoever. But you watch his video and it's going to be hard not to believe some of the stuff that he's talking about.
Well, I think it's important that we don't blindly follow numbers too, because you can massage the outcomes even with the same data. But it's definitely, we should be making our decisions based on facts as well as the most we can do, the most accurate we can get. And, there's a lot of different facts out there. I think there's a number of reasons the cost of, or the lifestyle has just improved. And I think the main reason is just technology. We have better technology and it's more accessible than ever before. And that alone is really the key to solving most of our issues. We just need to outsmart our way out of all the problems in our life. I feel like that's all life is about, right? You're either outsmarting it or you're getting held down by it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, technology at its core just makes your life easier. And if technology doesn't make your life easier, then, it's pointless and why have it? There's that old adage that says if you were to go 100 years into the past and ask the farmer, if he would like a plow, or if you'd like a new plow or a mule or something like that, he's going to be like, oh, well, I'll take the plow. but he doesn't even know that, a tractor exists yet. He's not going to ask for the tractor because he doesn't even know what a tractor is. So life has just gotten progressively easier and easier and easier for everybody, and we become a lot more specialized. And kind of going back to education, I think that that's something that education has done for us, is made a lot of people more specialized in a certain category or area, very fine specialized. When we went to college, just in hospitality program, there was like 7 different degrees you could get. you know 20, 30
Right.
years ago, there was probably only one: hospitality. Maybe hotel and restaurant was different, but like that's it. But now you have all these different subcategories, and that's just in one particular field. In physics, there's going to be a ton. In history, in mathematics, in psychology, counseling, there's so many different subdivisions, and people are becoming more and more specialized. And I think that's something that we have done better, is to create more specialized people, so that now you have this specialist who can do this, and then you have more people specializing, so that the tasks are getting laser sharp instead of just so broad, which is it's good and it's bad though. You have less people farming than ever before. That's a fact.
But we're producing more food than ever before.
Exactly, because those people who do produce the food are specialized, and they know how to produce more food better than we knew how to do 20.
Well, I mean, if you take economics, right, that's just basic economics 101, is the specialization. Generally, if you have a team of specialists working together in an overall goal, it produces a higher output than one individual doing all the jobs. And I think that's why it's so hard to be an entrepreneur when you're by yourself, especially without having a team, is because you're trying to do all those jobs. But if you delegate your job and you have the best person for each position, you're going to have a greater outcome.
Yeah, for sure. 100%.
But from his video, what really kind of caught my eye was the developing nations, even though we still think that they're doing horrible, are really doing much better than they did 100 years ago. But then you have to look at, that's what just in the last 100 years us as a species has done to improve the quality of our lives. Indoor plumbing, electrical systems, computers. I mean, just those 3 things alone, not even regarding transportation, communication, everything else. And this is with this banking system in place that's really hindering us. Imagine what we did if we actually had a sound, fair system in place.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's always funny how everybody always uses 100 years as sort of like the ruler to compare life between now and then. I always think that's pretty funny. Well, I don't know why.
Should there be another ruler? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, I do it too, so I don't know.
I was reading a book earlier this week called The Synchronicity Key. And it's basically one chapter is about Einstein's theory of relativity, where he basically went on and proved that time isn't linear, it's 3-dimensional, we just haven't figured it out. So in our time, just like you were saying before, right, we don't know what else is out there. So right now, that's kind of our ruler state.
Right, true.
So yeah, go check out the rest of the TED Talks. Just go to nowdaily.com. You can breeze through them. Going back to what's going on in our society, there are a few things that are a little concerning on our current trajectory. If you want to look at the last 20 years, I think we're on a decline over the last 20, but on an incline over the last 2000 for sure. Right? That would kind of be my guess on the situation.
Yeah. I mean, as far as technology goes, as far as quality of life goes, as far as how fast we can go. Oh yeah, and all that's on an incline for sure. But there's a few little things probably on decline. I think culturally, we're not making as many crazy sort of revolutionary breakthroughs as we were before. And I think one of the things is this technology that we've created that's supposed to make networking easier, social networking, and it just drives people further apart, drives people away from people and further into their devices. And
Yeah, there's a recent study on that. I wonder if I can find it. Basically, they went and proved that people that use Facebook are more depressed than people that don't.
that's funny. Yeah.
So this software that was created to connect us all is really pulling us all apart. I mean, I kind of just believe that you have to. It's a tool, and like any other tool, you can harm yourself with it.
Right, right, right. I mean, you could build a hammer, you could build a house with a hammer, but you could also, break your hand with it. So,
True. But one of the things that's definitely on the decline that we did some research on this week was the marriage rate, and how that's been on a steady decline really in the last 20 years. On here, back in the 1960s, so not a 100-year marker, but let's say 50 years or so, 55. 65% of people between 18 and 32 years old were married, while in 2013 this went down to 26%. So that's basically a third of what it was 50 years ago.
right, right. That's crazy. I mean, you might have to also compare the average lifespan, though, because if you're talking about the period in your life of, you know, you're born, puberty, marriage, middle age, and end of life. Marriage, middle age, and end of life change with, how old people get. But I think it's a cultural thing. Again, people are, more people are in the 60s. People are, I bet you more people were leaving and joining the military, and they would probably get married right before they left. And you got people who are just going straight into work, into factories, into farming, and they're getting married right away. High school sweethearts. Now not so much. People are like, well, I'm going to go to college. I got to go find myself, and you don't hear too many high school sweetheart stories anymore. That's a rarity.
No, you don't. I know a few. And I've also known a few that don't really work out. They did not work out very well, so that's not like an end-all, be-all either. But, if it was just the marriage rate, I would say, okay, that's just a social shift, and it's not that big of a deal, although I truly believe that there is more power on two people coming together. But what concerns me is the overall trend, because of that, and because of a pretty high amount of abortions. I saw some data on that, but I'm not even going to get into that subject. Basically, the birth rate hasn't been increasing at all either, or very steadily. So I want to show this video by Mike Maloney. You can go to Mike Maloney's channel. He owns a website called goldsilver.com. I think he's a gold and silver broker. But he's really good at graphically showing data like we were talking about earlier. And this data is all about our society and how that's going to affect the country as a whole. So let's take a look at this.
This is the demographics of the United States back in the year 1940. And it's broken into 5-year age groups. And what I'm going to show you here is the baby boom, and one of the reasons that we're going into this deflationary scenario. And we're also in this swing from individualism to collectivism. This is a pendulum, a cycle that just goes back and forth throughout time. And this is the greatest threat to your well-being and the well-being of the economy and freedom. We're going through a period where this demographic is going to cause some huge problems. So here we are in 1950, and you can see the beginning of that baby boom taking off. 1960, 1970, and this wave. Now, the reason I've got this broken up into these different colors, children are the ultimate consumers. They consume everything, they produce nothing, except a quality of life for their parents, a big reward as far as seeing them grow up and so on. But economically, children are an economic loss. They consume economic energy. What you're seeing here is this wave coming into working age. The green area is sort of a break-even area. That's when people are getting a job, and it might be a minimum wage job or something like that, and might be sharing an apartment with a few other people. And then as you get into the yellow area, you start to become a net positive for society. You're paying income tax, you're producing more than you consume, and then you get into what's called the maximum spending demographic. The maximum spending demographic is ages 45 to 54. And this group lives in the largest houses of their lifetimes. They're driving the most cars of their lifetimes. They're sending their kids off to college. They're spending a lot. Then they become empty nesters. That's the maximum saving demographic. Once the kids are gone off to college, they go, holy moly, we didn't save anything, and we want to retire in 5 years or 10 years. And so they start saving, and then you get to the point where they retire, and they become a maximum social burden demographic, I call it, simply because they're liquidating assets. They've got their stocks and their savings, and each year they're going to liquidate some of those to live, and the only driver that in the economic driver is the medical industry. They drive the medical industry. So economically, the maximum social burden group is a net loss for the prosperity of society, the prosperity of an economy. And so I'm going to go back again, and you can see that maximum social burden group almost didn't exist in 1940. And there's a lot of people of that working age and maximum spending age supporting the few people that were of the maximum social burden category. And then we get the baby boom sweeping through, and in the 80s and that stock market boom of the 90s and all the way up to 2000, that yellow area that really drives the economy was growing every year. Now, we have an economy where it's supposed to grow at about 3%, or it's going to stall. We inflate the currency supply at about that rate. But now, after the year 2000, we've got 2010, the peak of the maximum spending demographic. And from now on, it's sort of downhill. Maximum savers, they do help drive the stock market, but look at that maximum social burden category and look at what happens next. So we are going into this time period right now. Now, the reason there's no children on there is they haven't been born yet. But if you look at, when I first presented this a couple of years ago, birth rates have been falling for quite a while now, and they've been falling even at an even greater speed since the crash of '08. And if you look at the data from the Great Depression, birth rates just fell off a cliff in the Great Depression. And so you have less people of the younger age coming into this demographic to support the people that are retiring. They didn't have the pill during the Great Depression. Contraception was something that was not within most people's reach. So here it is automated, and you can see that big wave sweeping through there. And if you could imagine data for the children, it would be at a much lower rate. And if we do have a big economic pullback, you're going to see that really reduce. So we're in, most likely, some very serious trouble here, because all of our social programs and the way the economy and the society is set up, everybody's expecting to be able to retire at a certain age and live fairly comfortably.
There you go.
Cool. Yeah, so some interesting data there for sure. I think the system's really been set up for us to continue to grow and produce. The financial system's the same way. So the entire system right now is set up where it only really functions correctly if everything is growing.
Yeah, that's That's crazy. And at 3% too, he said. And which is like a number I think we've heard before. Different things in, as far as Social Security and savings and, 401ks, 3%, 3%. So, yeah, but that's crazy that we would just stall out and cease to be functional if we don't continue growing at 3%. So it almost makes you wonder, like after this big '07, '08 crash, and everybody was like, "Oh, America's getting back on track. Oh, we're back up to 3%." I mean, how much of that is to just, make us feel better and not worry about it? How much of that is true? Are we really back up to like a 3% growth rate? Are we on track for that so that we don't stall out? Or is that just something they're telling us so that we don't worry and we keep spending and we stop hiding money in the mattress, so to speak?
Well, I think it's pretty evident. It's pretty evident that you raise the debt ceiling, it raises the debt. We're at like almost $20 trillion in debt. It's just an insane amount of money. But then you have to wonder, like, what is the debt? I saw an image on Facebook or something, and it was like, who does the Earth owe with all this debt? And it's like, Jupiter? It's like, who the fuck owns this debt?
We do. The American people own the debt, and probably, globally too, if you want to think about it. I mean,
Well, it's by people that buy the treasury bonds, and there's definitely some individual investors, there's some brokerage firms, but I think you're right. I think the majority by far is the Federal Reserve and the major banks.
Yeah.
So, I think that's the whole cahoots. Until people wake up to that, I think nothing's really going to change. I think it's just going to be, even if you put like a new president in there and they were so different from everyone else, they were just like, let's shut down the government. I don't think they could do anything.
No, I mean, I don't think it would. It would involve shutting down, the banking system as we know it. Shutting down, the people who are artificially inflating and who are making money at the top and not really, spreading the wealth, so to speak. But what the guy was saying in the speech about how the 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 retirees are the ones draining, our economy, our social securities the most. And then you see things like people are living longer. Well, people are living longer, but they're still trying to retire at the same age. And I don't think that his graph almost like equated into some of that stuff too. Like I think his bar graph should have gone maybe one more bar over to really show how the lack of children and the increasing age is just going to keep, draining our economy. We're going to have to start growing at like 6% every year for it to not collapse.
Well, I think we're way beyond that because, I just don't see a good outcome to this. The problem is they could probably string this thing out for, if you look at the fall of Rome, it didn't just happen in one day. There was a point where they were like, hey, we're going to sack your city and blow everything up, or you got to give us, I think it was like 30 tons of silver or something that they couldn't come up with. So it doesn't happen in just one day. It happened, I think over 100, 200 year period. So I think that's the scary thing, is if we are now on the decline, because all civilizations are basically a bell curve, right? The bell curve has a peak and then there's only a decline after the peak. So the question is, have we peaked? And I think with the current system in place, we definitely have. But I think that we could put a new one in place that would be even better.
Well, then that's not a bell curve, is it?
A bell curve for a single system.
Ah, okay.
Right? So we've peaked on this Federal Reserve fiat currency system. Actually, in this video, he even goes into explaining that really well in a good chart. Let's see if we can find it. Yeah, here we go. So he's going to talk about
What's interesting is that this reflects the seasons of the Kondratiev wave of spring, summer, autumn, winter. Spring, summer, autumn, winter. And we're going into a winter, and that's very deflationary. The next cycle you've seen before, we learned about this in episode 2, but it's the shift in world monetary systems. The classical gold standard, the gold exchange standard, the Bretton Woods system, the US dollar standard, and there's something that's coming next. These usually coincide with major wars, but whatever this next shift is, it's going to be chaotic, and it's probably going to be a little painful. It's not going to be pretty. And we learned in episode 3 how countries are abandoning the US dollar standard at a blazing rate right now. It's developing stress cracks, and it's going to implode. And here's the thing, is that is going to be happening with the convergence of all of these cycles. We have the East-West cycle, we have the baby boom demographic, we have the wealth distribution cycle, household debt as a percentage of disposable income, the stock market cycle, the Kondratiev wave, and the shift in world monetary systems. And the thing about all these cycles is that they have all peaked and they're starting to descend, which is deflationary. Deflation, 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 deflation. And that is all happening at the time when the world monetary system is developing stress cracks, it's about to implode, and it's going to be extremely chaotic. These things are all going to make it even more chaotic. So that...
Yeah, so, I don't know, something might happen, but again, it might go on for a lot longer.
Maybe. I mean, him overlaying all those cycles and how they're all going to, how they're all peaking and they're going to descend all at the same time. I mean, that's chaos right there. That sounds
yeah,
like
I mean, but I don't want people to think that we're peddling fear porn.
True.
Because the way I look at it, and I think most people look at that and they say, oh man, we're doomed. Cognitive dissonance, right? I'm going to shut this out of my reality and pretend that I didn't watch that video. And I'm going to go over here and make some dinner. Like, that's what most people would do. I kind of look at it, I'm like, okay, look, we're in this mess of shit. But there's huge opportunity in all this stuff if you know kind of how things are going to play out. There were more wealth was created in the Great Depression than any other time. So you just have to make sure that you're on the right side, and you just have to educate yourself on what's really going on. The problem is, even doing all the research we do, it's still hard to figure out what's going on because so many things are controlled on the back end. All the markets are controlled. So if you buy any type of stock in any of the major markets, or even gold ETFs, or the price of gold, or even the price of real estate, it's all pretty much fluctuating on something that's controlled outside of your realm. That's why I think, but at the end of the day, it's all about producing. If you produce value, you're going to be successful.
Right, for sure. I mean, if you're definitely producing value, producing something of value for society, you should stay. Unless the scary thing is if that scary thing that comes around the corner devalues whatever it is that you do. What if tomorrow, what if today you're a value to society, but tomorrow you're not? Then what do you do?
I mean, then we're getting into ideology of ideology of a lot of people that are in power right now. Because these people look at these curves. They're the ones looking at this data and saying, look, just like the Nazis said, we should get rid of anyone in the society that is basically elderly and is never going to be able to produce value again. Right? While you would say, no, I want to keep grandma around. I like grandma. She can't do anything, but let's take care of her. That's what we believe in. That's what the normal person would believe in. But I think we have to realize that these people in power, and I'm not just making this up. Yes, the Nazis did that for sure. But if you look in Obamacare, there really are provisions on when to not give someone care, especially when they're in an elderly position. So I'm not, this is a real thing that's going on right now. The death panel thing is real to an extent if you look at the documents. Now, I don't know of many cases of doctors actually doing that, but I'm sure things have gone on. We just haven't seen it in the public yet.
Yeah. I mean, it makes a lot of it doesn't make sense, that at some point you do, with this universal healthcare and with the way that there's more people draining it than are putting into it, that at some point, I mean, you do have to cut people off, young or old, depending on, how much they're draining on a social, medical or universal healthcare plan like that.
I mean, I don't know. I think my personal opinion is there's a lot of medical devices and cures that have been suppressed as well. So how do we know that our lifespans couldn't be extended even longer, but they purposely have been kept from us, that information?
Yeah. Now you're just getting into the whole conspiracy theories.
I mean, yeah, I'm getting into a lot of conspiracy theories, but there's been a lot of very strange things. I mean, just on Netflix, there's a documentary on Dr. Brzezinski, who basically discovered a partial cure for cancer, cured, I think, a good third to 50% of his patients. And he went through almost 20 years in legal battles, and they wouldn't let him practice on anyone, even though he was helping everyone that he touched.
Yeah, man. Stuff like that, it's sad. It's crazy. It happens. I'm sure it happens all the time, all over the place.
I mean, talking about diseases, though, what's going on with this Charlie Sheen situation?
Yeah, man. Charlie Sheen goes on Today's Show, tells the world he's HIV positive for the last 4 years, and then admits to, bribing or paying off people who would blackmail him into the millions. Like, I mean, that's just as crazy as Charlie Sheen coming on air saying he has HIV. And he got right into it, too. If you see the interview, he gets right into it. He's not holding anything back.
Yeah, I saw the whole interview, or at least a good portion of it. And, I wonder why he paid, I think he said he paid almost $10 million to keep this secret.
Yeah.
I mean, why is extortion worth it at that point?
I mean, I think he didn't think it was worth it at first, and just over the years. I'm sure it didn't all happen at once. I'm sure it was over time. He didn't just give one person $10 million. It was probably like $1 million here, a couple 100,000 there. One person told another person, and more people started blackmailing him. So that's just sad. It's double sad. That like he said, that these people who are blackmailing him are taking money basically away from his children. And then just today, there was a thing saying that he had to sell one of his houses, which he bought, but his children, he owns them, but the house are owned by trust. So as soon as he sells them, all the money goes to his kids. So he owns 3 homes, and he just sold one of them, but every time he sells the home, all the money goes to his children. Apparently, he just had to sell his Beverly Hills house to, or one of them, to, just give his kids some money, apparently.
I don't think he's going to be broke by any means, but, the interesting thing is, I think some of the accusations, a lot of people are coming out, girls that are saying that they didn't, he didn't tell them. I think that one of the porn stars, Brie Olson, is saying that I guess that's when he was in that coke binge that he was going on for a while. Then you have to wonder, how did he get it?
Who did he get it from? I mean, prostitutes, man. He admits to that openly. Charlie Sheen has been getting tail for years, man. So it could have happened at any time, but I mean, apparently it peaked to the point where he went and got tested 4 years ago. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, his doctor went on the show too, and he did a pretty good job explaining that he doesn't have AIDS. He only has a very, very small trace of the HIV virus. I mean, it's pretty amazing that you have such a small trace of something that technically isn't harming you at the moment, and yet it's such a huge deal.
I know. Well, it's suppressing his immune system, and he could, end up
Well,
developing.
no, it's not. The doctor says it's not suppressing. He has
his
no
immune-
symptoms right now. It's just the HIV virus is there and could potentially in the future produce AIDS, which actually suppresses the immune system.
Oh well, he's lucky, man. He's lucky for now.
Yeah, I think. I mean, do you think it has anything to do with this hookup culture, or you think just Charlie Sheen? I think that's just a normal thing for guys to do.
I mean, Charlie Sheen's been a part of the hookup culture since he probably invented the hookup culture. Not gonna lie, I don't know why he isn't like the creator of something like Tinder, except for Charlie Sheen only bangs supermodels. I don't think he downgrades to just regular models. He stays in like supermodel category. But I would say that, the hookup culture scene of Tinders and Grinders and all that kind of stuff, doesn't help situations like this. I'm sure there's a ton of people out there with similar symptoms and problems. You know, there's a billboard down the street from my house, and it says Tinder and Grinder, and it has like a silhouette of four people, and then the other two people it says like gonorrhea and chlamydia, and it's like go get yourself tested. So like even the places that do testing know that Tinders and Grinders of the world are how people are spreading diseases, and they're all just for hookups. So I mean,
Yeah, I mean, we were talking last night about doing a documentary about the whole online dating and this in the hookup culture. I
yeah.
think Hollywood's a weird place, man. And you're right, it has a ton of STD billboards. Like, what is going on in Hollywood?
Yeah, for sure, way more than normal.
Way more than normal. Like it's almost disgustingly weird, to be honest. I feel dirty going to Hollywood because of the STD billboards. As almost the STD billboards can possibly give me an STD.
Right, like just looking at them, you're like,
Just
oh,
looking
no.
at them scares me. I stay in Venice because of that.
I didn't wear a condom and I looked at an STD billboard. Oh no.
Yeah, they're scary, man. I don't know. I see a lot of problems with it. To me, it's something that I kind of think about for sure. I definitely I'm more cautious. Absolutely.
I mean, I don't use any hookup apps. I have a girlfriend, and we've been steady for almost 3 years, coming up soon. So I don't even have an account. So I don't know about that life, but from my friends and from seeing people and from tending bar and seeing people on Tinder dates or people talking about their Tinder at a bar, it's definitely changed our culture for sure. Definitely changed our culture.
Yeah, as a bartender, we should do a lot of interviews of bartenders and just their stories. That would be cool.
On other people's Tinder dates, yeah.
Yeah, like, do you have any stories of people obviously on a first date or using Tinder at the bar?
Yeah, man. Like people, it's you see it because people will have their phone open to like the pictures of that person, and then they'll be looking at their phone and then looking at people as they walk in, and like looking at their phone and looking as they walk in to like wait to see when that person walks in. And then they talk, and when you meet somebody at a bar for a Tinder date, like it's pretty obvious what you're gonna do. You're like doing shots, you're drinking some beers, you're talking about stuff. You're like, oh, I already like the way this person looks. Oh, well, now they're not an idiot when they open their mouth. They're not an asshole. Okay. And then people head off to go do what they do. So it's pretty routine, pretty standard.
Interesting. Yeah, I haven't gone on many Tinder dates, to be honest. I used it a few times, but I just got like spam messages. Like
Yeah.
bots. There's like bots. I'm like, I'm not dealing with this. Plus, I think I went on one. I have gone on one Tinder date, and the girl who showed up did not look like the girl in the picture. And I was
Man.
like, I can't trust this. I can't trust this. You got to knock it down like multiple points.
Yeah, man. I mean, the Facebook angles has been a real thing for a while now. The angles.
Yeah, I mean, Photoshop's a magnificent
Photoshop.
piece of software.
Yeah, there's like auto Photoshop nowadays.
Maybe someone should create a dating app that like makes like you're verified. Like you have to go to a third party place
And
and
get your
they
photo
create
taken.
your profile.
That'd be funny. Man, people would trust that better. But I mean, Tinder too has that thing where you pay money for super likes. My coworker was telling me about this, and he was like, "Oh, well, if I paid into my Tinder account, I could get more likes and I could be on it more." I didn't quite understand what he was saying at first, but as he was explaining it to me, I was like, "Well, boom, right there. That's how Tinder makes all of its money. They have all these guys paying money into it so that they can have super likes and like more people. Boom, now Tinder's making money and they've added a value to, somebody's like super liked you. Oh, well, that person has money, enough money to spend on liking me. Oh shit, it's almost like getting
The
flowers. It might as well,
$10, oh my God, God
yeah,
forbid.
it might as well be like you're actually sending somebody flowers or something like that.
Well, I think our idea of the clink drink was a better gift, but
Yeah. It actually
um,
got you a drink.
yeah, right. It actually got you something. You had to spend money on it.
Clink should have just been a dating app and not a drinking app, and we would have been rolling in it.
I think any app though, it's hard though. There's one dating app. I read an article on it somewhere where they got caught where most of their accounts were literally just fake bots. So they were charging all these guys because the bots would message them. And then they would think it's like some hot girl messaging them. So they would pay money and then talk to a computer.
Nice, nice.
I mean, that's like taking it to a whole level. What happened with people like having real conversations? Like we're just one generation ago. Like if my parents wanted to go out on a Saturday night, they literally had to like wait by their phone for people to call them.
Yeah.
What? Like we're not that far away for how things used to be. I think
Uh,
my pet peeve is just people constantly on their phone, especially in like social settings. But I think it's also a kind of a defense mechanism for them. I get when people get uncomfortable if you're having a conversation with someone and there's like 10 seconds of dead silence, people start getting very uncomfortable.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
think they pull out their phone to kind of shield that. Almost like it creates a bubble around them.
yeah. Or they can just ignore what's going on, or they run out of interesting things to say, and they're like, oh, let me pull out my phone and find something else interesting to like say or talk about, or this conversation isn't interesting anymore. Let me go breeze through my news feed to find something interesting.
Right, exactly, because you need to be constantly entertained, which is
Yeah.
could be a good thing, but then if you look at it, that's the micro level, the single individual person, right? So really, we've kind of separated from before we had like these big groups of big families and tribes, right? We started out as tribes as a human, and then the tribes then broke into families, maybe 10, 20 people in a family. Then that broke into smaller families, and now we've broken down into individuals in a lot of cases.
Hmm.
And I think that's just a microcosm of what's happening on the macro level from the global kind of political perspective. Because everyone's looking the other way because they don't want to deal with discomfort, but it's allowing the people that want to do what they want to do whatever they want to do because no one's really standing up for it.
Interesting. All right.
I don't know how I'm trying to connect staring at your phone to causing the one world government or whatever this is, but I think
Yeah.
there's something to it because if you look at everything that they're trying to do, if you look into the geoengineering stuff, if there's a lot of documents on that, whether it's real or not, or something that's definitely provable is the fluoride in the water, which LA started adding it in 2007. Harvard has come out, said that it causes brain damage. It basically dumbs you down. And, there's things that are in our environment that are literally, from a biological perspective, calming us down so we wouldn't get upset or riled. I think that's one of the reasons why we haven't had a huge turnover in our society and kind of fixing a lot of these problems, because people are just comfortable and they don't want to get past that comfort.
Yeah, that's true. But I think that's the case with a lot of things. If you look through the history, people get comfortable and, they're happy with where they are, and they don't really want to change things. They think that they're doing the right thing. They think that everything is copacetic, and they don't want to rock the boat. I mean, how many times has somebody told you to like not rock the boat versus somebody telling you to be like, yeah, man, yeah, raise up and riot. Yeah, go ahead and, overturn that car. That's a great idea. You know what I mean?
I'm not saying riot. We're not talking about like being violent and rioting. We're talking about just taking like massive action towards something in a non-violent way. Whether that's like creating a cause, doing something to kind of help fix the situation. Even creating a video like this and just talking about things that you're discovering.
Yeah. Still though, you'll find way more people just content with status quo than making change.
And I agree, but I also think that for a lot of people, the status quo right now isn't that bad. But right. I think that it's this facade, which we've talked about, even the demographics and all the data that we were just talking about 10 minutes ago, shows that it is a facade. And until this facade is taken away, and then people realize, wait a minute, I just worked for 20, 30, 40 years, and I'm in a really bad position right now. How did this happen? I think until that moment hits, and it is hitting a number of people right now, but I think until it hits the majority of people, that they're really not going to do anything about it.
No, not at all.
So, but I think that there is a possibility to fix it all before shit hits the fan. I think that we can put new systems in place. And I think the solution to me is just more freedom. To me, you don't need more organization and more systems and stuff on top of it. Just more freedom. Just let the individual figure it out. Go back from the individual will figure out to create the family or to have bigger units of friends, and they'll look after each other. I think that's really the solution.
Individuality, yeah. So I guess a one world government is the opposite of that. So we don't want that.
Pretty much, yeah. That's pretty much the opposite. If someone that you've never met in your life can tell you what you can and cannot buy, I think that's the problem.
Yeah, I can see that. Very true. Very true.
All right, well, let's wrap it up. I think we've talked about a number of topics tonight. You can find more on nowdaily.com. I think we're gonna start having call-ins probably in the next episode. Maybe we'll have some people that can call in. So tune in next Sunday, 6 p.m. Although this week's Thanksgiving, so I want to say Happy Thanksgiving. Why don't we talk about one or two things we're thankful for before we close it out?
Well, I'm thankful for I'm gonna go cheesy and just go with I'm thankful for my family. I got them coming into town next week after Thanksgiving. They're coming into town to hang out with me instead of having me go see them. So I'm thankful for them coming down here to come and be with me. And my girlfriend's planning everything for my birthday this year, so that's pretty cool.
Nice, cool. I guess I'm thankful for just the world we live in. There's some pretty amazing shit in it that we're all figuring out. And I'm thankful for, my friends and family, for sure. It's probably the most important thing. All right, cool. So, subscribe below. Leave your comments. If there's something you're curious about, let us know. We'll research it. We'll figure it out. We'll start talking about it. And we'll see you next week, Sundays at 6 p.m. I'm Robert Crawford, and this has been Now Daily.
Now Daily with Robert Crawford, uncovering real stories worth sharing. Want more? Visit the website nowdaily.com/show. Thanks for listening. This has been Now Daily with Robert Crawford, uncovering real stories worth sharing. Want more? Visit the website nowdaily.com/show.